Have you ever looked down at your watch and saw a depth rating of 300 meters or 500 or 300 feet? And you've wondered, how do they know? How do they test it? How do they know that it's going to be watertight? I'm going to be able to dive at that depth. Well, at USIC Tactical Timepiece, we do pressure testing. We simulate the pressure underwater and test every watch to ensure that it's airtight and it's going to be able to be diveable. So I'm going to go over a couple different methods that people use, and then I'm going to go over the method we use and how we do it. There's 3 different methods that are commonly used to test dive watches or any watch for a water rating. What water resistant depth is it rated to? The first one is dry testing, and that's air pressure method. The second one is water testing, which is a water pressure method. And the third one is ISO 6425 standard for a lot of dive watches. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do an air test and we're going to do a water test, or a wet test, or a submersible test is what they call it. And we're going to do that by simulating that pressure underwater utilizing this pressure tank. There's a dry section and there's a wet section. So we're going to begin with the dry section. I just made this watch the other day. It's an USIC Tactical Timepiece Black Ops Night watch, and I'm going to test it to make sure it's diveable and that it's going to be watertight or airtight and it's not going to get flooded on dive. So let's begin. Okay, before I go over the test itself, I'm going to talk a little bit about some common points of failures with watches. The crown is one of the most common points of failure. Obviously, there's 2 large orifices within the watch. One is the back, and there's a case on the back with an O-ring, and then there's the crown. The crown is where you adjust the time, date, where you wind the watch. The crown has an O-ring on most dive watches, and all dive watches we have, it has an O-ring, and it's a screw down. So you press down on the crown, screw it down tight, and the O-ring locks it so it's airtight. A lot of times people get water intrusion because they don't screw down the crown. They leave the crown open and water protrudes in through that orifice. So that's one of the most common places where people get water within their watches. The second most common is the back. The back also has an O-ring between the back case and the whole case. And that could be screwed down incorrectly. It could be misaligned. It could be a deteriorated O-ring. There could be a lot of problems why water intrusion gets in there. But those are the most common places for water intrusion. So my testing process is that I do a dry test first. And so you can see the watch is in there. It's actually holding on a spring bar in there with a hook. So I screw down the cylinder, make sure that it's airtight. Then I'm going to pump air into the cylinder, and I'm going to pump air into it so that there's 6 bars of air in the cylinder. Okay, so you take a look at this simulator. You can see there's a gauge on there, and that gauge actually tracks how many psi, how many bars, or how many pounds of pressure go into this tank. The pressure simulates diving, right? The water pressure when you dive. At every 33 feet is a different atmospheric pressure. So as you go down 33 feet, that's 1 atmosphere. 66 feet, that's 2 atmospheres. 99 feet, 3 atmospheres. This dial, or this gauge, registers in bars. 1 bar is 10 meters, or 32.8 feet, which is pretty much equivalent to 1 atmosphere. 1 atmosphere, like I said, is 33 feet. So this pressure tester goes up to 6 bars, which is 197 feet or 65 meters. For context, the maximum recommended depth for recreational scuba diving is 130 feet. So this goes beyond recreational scuba diving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the dry test first. And what I'm going to do is pump air into the cylinder, and I'm going to see if there's any problems or any air actually gets into the case itself. As I release the pressure or the air from the cylinder, it will expand, just like in underwater. As you go up, it expands. As you go down, it contracts, right? So if it expands and there's air leaks in here, it will blow up the front crystal, and I don't want that to happen. but it's a lot easier to replace a crystal than to replace a whole watch. So I do the dry test first, and then I do the water test. So I'm going to pump up this to 6 bars, and I'll begin right now. Okay, so I just pumped it up. As you can see right here, there is actually 6 bars. So I pumped this up to 6 bars, added air in there for pressure. It seems good. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for pressure to go actually, or air to go into the case itself. If air goes into the case itself, as I release, it will expand and will blow out the front crystal. So I'm going to try to release the air out of it. I released the air. I saw nothing. The crystal still looks good, as you can see. No problems there. It looks like it's pretty well tight. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a submersion test. What I'm going to do is the exact same process, but I'm going to submerge it underwater or below this line here. Okay, so the submersion test. I've submerged the watch itself in the case. I pumped it up to 6 bar, close to 195 feet. And I'm looking for air bubbles to come out of the crown, out of the bezel, or out of the back. And I see none. So this test validates the first test and lets me know that this is airtight and diveable, right? As you can see, the second hand is moving inside the watch itself. Everything looks good. I'm going to do the same thing with this test. I'm going to release the air to see if there's any problems or anything comes out of it. Now, remember, I put air within the cylinder, so there's air that's inside of here. So you may see some bubbles coming out, but those bubbles are based on the air that I inserted into the cylinder. Okay, there were a couple air bubbles. That was air that was trapped in there from all the pressure that was put in when I submerged it and pumped it up. There's no air bubbles that are coming out anywhere. And so these air bubbles that are inside here, it's not from leakage at all. It's from the air that was inserted in there and then just released. So I'm going to take this out, take a look at the watch, make sure it is dry, everything's working fine, but it looks like it's watertight and it's ready to go. Okay, just took it out. Going to dry it off. And it looks good. Everything's fine on it. Now there's some tape on here from because it's a new watch, right? And that's just to protect it so it doesn't get scratched. But as you can see, everything looks good. So that's how we test our watches. The other thing that we do is my wife and I are scuba instructors, and we love scuba diving. That's one of the reasons I love scuba watches so much, or dive watches. So we actually dive with them, and in the next couple of weeks I'll post some pictures with us diving with the watches and the depth gauge next to it, so you can see us actually utilizing the watches and what it was intended for. And if you have any questions, email me. I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.